Yes. Yes. The young man in luxurious clothes nodded hurriedly as he said with respect and reverence, "Commander Duan, I'm the third son of the Su clan's patriarch, Su Boya. I'm called Surang." "I remember now. He's the commander of our Crimson Sky Kingdom's embroidered uniform guard from all those years ago, Duan Ling Tian." Someone amongst the crowd of spectators in the surroundings shouted out. His words were like a fuse that caused the entire crowd to burst into an uproar. "I remember now as well. Commander Duan is the #1 genius in the martial Dao in the history of our Crimson Sky Kingdom, and he even led our Crimson Sky Kingdom's army to conquer the Southern Champion Kingdom's southern barbaric city without a single casualty." "Now that you said that, I recall it as well. When Commander Duan led the army to conquer the southern barbaric city, I was only 15. I never imagined that Commander Duan was still so young after so many years." Humph. "Don't forget that when Duan Ling Tian led the army to conquer the southern barbaric city all those years ago, he himself was only a little fellow at the age of around 20 years old. Commander Duan is my idol. I never imagined that I would have the chance to meet my idol today. I have no more regrets in my life." The surrounding spectators discussed animatedly. Numerous scorching gazes descended onto Duan Ling Tian in unison. All those years ago, Duan Ling Tian was a figure that was like the sun in the midday sky in the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Not only was his natural talent capable of being considered to be peerless, even his ability in military strategy was something no one could compare to. During that time, Duan Ling Tian could be said to be a flag of the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Duan Ling Tian? He's Duan Ling Tian. The young man in embroidered clothes that knelt on the floor had raised his head at this moment, and when he looked at Duan Ling Tian once again, there wasn't any arrogance on his face any longer, only terror and astonishment remained. This name, Duan Ling Tian, wasn't the slightest bit unfamiliar to him. It was even to the extent that when Duan Ling Tian's name had shaken the entire Crimson Sky Kingdom, he who was young had once taken Duan Ling Tian to be his idol, and he was fervent towards Duan Ling Tian for a period of time. After many years passed and growing day by day, this portion of his memories had been buried within the depths of his heart. Now, his idol from all those years ago stood before him and had been humiliated like that by him. He even had the intention to die in his heart. "What kind of explanation do you plan to give me and my friend for today's matter? If you're unable to make a decision, I can go have a nice chat with your father." Duan Ling Tian looked at Surang and asked indifferently. Surang took a deep breath when he heard this. "Commander Duan, don't worry. I'll give you an explanation that you'll be satisfied with. There's no need to trouble my father with this matter. As soon as he finished speaking, Soarang's leg kicked out like a bolt of lightning, and it tapped onto the location of the dantian of the young man in embroidered clothes that knelt on the ground. Bang! An enormous band sounded out as milky white origin energy surged out and drained from the dantian of the young man, and his entire body was kicked flying like an arrow, leaving the bow to once again fall flat on the ground with his face pressed onto the ground. His cultivation had been directly crippled. Cousin brother. You crippled my cultivation. The young man let out a pained shrill cry, and then he forcefully endured the pain that came from his dantian as he stared resentfully at Soarang and shouted out grievously. But Soarang paid no attention to him instead, and he looked at Duan Lingtian as he said respectfully and reverently, "Commander Duan, are you satisfied with my handling of the matter? If you're not satisfied, I'll kill him right now." Soarang's tone was cold and indifferent, and his words seemed as if he wasn't the slightest bit related to the young man in embroidered clothes. It was difficult to imagine that Soarang and this young man in embroidered clothes were actually cousin brothers. You're very good. At least, as far as I'm concerned, you're much better than Subo Yat. Duan Lingtian glanced deeply at Soarang, and he couldn't help but slightly admire Soarang's resoluteness in his heart. After all, that was his cousin brother. As the saying goes, even a vicious tiger wouldn't eat its cubs. Disregarding Soarang's ability in any other aspect, merely his methods of dealing with danger was sufficient to cause admiration in others. The matter today seemed simple and was only a good-for-nothing disciple causing trouble, yet if thought about deeply, it wasn't the slightest bit difficult for him to annihilate the Su clan with his current strength and background, whereas, at this critical moment, Soarang had made the choice of making a minor sacrifice to save the interests of the clan, and it showed that he was an extremely calm and able person. "Commander Duan, you're too kind." Soarang's expression remained unchanged when he was praised by Duan Lingtian. "Then Commander Duan, what's your opinion?" "My friend's opinion is my opinion." Duan Lingtian shrugged and took a step back, moved out of Feng Tianwu's way. Meanwhile, Soarang looked at Feng Tianwu, and his eyes revealed a trace of surprise, yet he didn't dare take another look and slightly lowered his head. His heart was filled with shock. According to his knowledge, Duan Lingtian was the person Princess Bai Yao had feelings for. Besides that, the sister of the #1 expert in the younger generation of the Xiao clan, Xiao Yu, a young woman that possessed an appearance equal to Princess Bai Yao, seemed have eyes only for Duan Lingtian as well. He'd seen both Princess Bai Yao and Xiao Yu's sister in the past, and he'd taken them to be goddesses, causing him to feel as if it was probably difficult to find a woman that was more beautiful than them in the world. Yet now, the young woman before him had instead caused him to realize how mistaken his thoughts at that time were. Not only was the appearance of this young woman in red clothes equal to Princess Bai Yao and Xiao Yu's sister, her temperament surpassed them. He felt the temperament of this red-clothed young girl before him was even more noble and elegant than Princess Bai Yao. Tian Wu, how do you want to punish him? Duan Ling Tian revealed a warm smile when facing Feng Tian Wu. Feng Tian Wu shook her head. Big brother Duan, since his cultivation has already been crippled, then let's just leave it at this. Obviously, Feng Tianwu didn't intend to pursue the matter further. Effing come over and apologize. Surang couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when he heard Feng Tianwu. Even though he would choose to cut his losses quickly and kill his cousin brother with his own two hands as a last resort, if it wasn't necessary, he still hoped that his cousin brother could live on. No matter what, the young man was his cousin brother, the cousin brother that had followed behind him since a young age, and they possessed a deep relationship. Meanwhile, the young man in embroidered clothes that was crippled seemed to have realized that danger had vanished, and he didn't dare dally when he heard Surang and hurriedly dragged his injured body over to kneel before Feng Tianwu. Slap! 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 The young man in embroidered clothes raised his hands before slapping himself from both left and right, and he said as he hit himself, "Thank you, young miss, for sparing my life. Thank you, young miss, for sparing my life." Feng Tianwu glared at the young man in embroidered clothes with detest, and then her gaze quickly turned to Duan Ling Tian and smiled lightly. "Big brother Duan, let's go." Her heart was filled with warmth when Duan Ling Tian stood out for her like this. "Okay." Duan Ling Tian nodded, and then he vanished at the end of the street with the three Feng clan members under the respectful gazes of Surang and the others. "Enough, he's gone." When he saw Duan Ling Tian's figure vanish before his eyes, yet the young man in embroidered clothes was still slapping himself, Surang frowned and stopped the young man. "I know you're angry with me in your heart. But I want to tell you that you'd either have your cultivation crippled or die today. I was only gambling earlier, hoping that your cultivation would be able to press down Duan Ling Tian's rage." Surang looked at his cousin brother and sighed. "Don't blame me." The young man in embroidered clothes nodded stiffly and said bitterly, "Cousin brother, I understand. Today's incident was indeed something that I brought upon myself. It's good that you understand." Surang nodded, and then his gaze flashed. "I never imagined that Duan Ling Tian had returned again." When Duan Ling Tian brought the three Feng clan members to his own courtyard house, he only saw a few familiar faces, and all of them were those servant girls that followed by Jing Ru's side. Young master. The servant girls were slightly excited when they saw Duan Lingtian once more. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled to her before asking, "Why is it only the few of you? Where's my father, mother, and Jing Ru?" "Young master, they left with Jing Ru 2 years ago. Jing Ru asked us to stay behind and wait for you to return so that we can tell this matter to you," said one of the servant girls. "Young master, your father asked us to tell you that he left something for you with the Divine Might Marquee, and he asked you to go get it yourself," said another servant girl. "They're gone? 2 years ago." Duan Lingtian frowned. "Have my father and mother returned during these past 2 years?" "No." The servant girls shook their heads. 2 years ago, when the Madam and Lord took Jing Ru, young Miss Xiao Lan, and Princess Bai Yao and left, they seemed to have gone far away and didn't say when they would return. Xiao Lan and Princess Bai Yao were taken away as well. Duan Lingtian's expression froze and slightly felt his head ache. What do mother and father want to do? Can't they go relax by themselves? Why did they bring Xiao Lang and Bai Yao along? Aren't they just intentionally making others misunderstand? Duan Lingtian was slightly speechless. He wasn't really disappointed for being unable to see his parents when he came back this time, and he even felt slight joy. Of course, the reason he felt fortunate was because of Feng Wudao, who followed behind him. Feng Wudao had followed him this time precisely for the sake of meeting his parents. As for the reason, he knew clearly in his heart, it was none other than for the sake of the matter between him and Tian Wu. As expected, a trace of disappointment flashed past Feng Wudao's eyes when he heard Duan Lingtian's parents had gone far away, and he sighed. Looks like we've come at the wrong time. You'll have a chance to meet in the future. Duan Lingtian smiled, but his current smile seemed fake no matter how one looked at it. Kid, you're surely looking forward to me being unable to meet your parents, right? Feng Wudao glanced deeply at Duan Lingtian, and he seemed as if he'd see through Duan Lingtian's thoughts. No. Duan Lingtian smiled embarrassedly, and then he didn't continue on this and instructed the servant girls. Go prepare a room for each of these 3 guests. Yes. The 3 servant girls replied before helping Feng Wudao's group of 3 prepare rooms for each of them in a short moment. Uncle Feng, Tian Wu, Elder Kong. Since the room is ready, all of you can go rest. I still have some matters to attend to and have to make a trip. Duan Lingtian stood up in the pergola at the rear courtyard and notified Feng Wudao's group of 3 before leaving his courtyard house.